Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
I'm Matt Miller.
And I'm Hannah Elliott, and this is Hot Pursuit.
All right, we have a very cool episode for you today. We're going to talk with Tyler Epp, he's running basically the F1 event, the whole thing in Miami, right?
Yeah, big. He's the guy at the top. He's the guy you want to call if you want to have a helicopter drop you in the middle.
Awesome.
It's him.
Yeah, although I think that would be expensive. Not that no one will do it, but also you went to a really cool event, a G-Wagon event yesterday, and we're both admittedly fans of at least the ICE version of the G-Wagon.
Yes, and I have to say, though, this electric version is getting so much hate online. It's brutal out there.
It's brutal. I have to say, the hate makes me want to like it even more. So we'll get to that.
You're very contrarian.
And we'll talk about Lamborghini because, speaking of electrification, they're introducing. Did they show it last night, or is it just leaking?
In
Beijing. So an Urus, which
hybrid
is my least favorite Lamborghini, hybrid, which I think is good. So maybe I'll like the new Urus better than I like the old Urus. But
maybe. And you had a Lamborghini to drive, didn't you?
Oh, and I spent 4 precious days driving a Lamborghini Huracan Sterrato. I will say it is the most fun I've had in a car in recent memory. Like, I drove the Aventador on the F1 track in Barcelona. That was awesome, but it was like almost 10 years ago, so I don't remember it, you know?
I don't remember things from a year ago.
Let's talk first about, so you're in LA and you go to this Mercedes event to launch the G-Wagon. Just tell us about like where it was and what it was like, because I saw that you had Willow with you.
Yes. Okay. So Mercedes...
And Willow is your dog, just
Willow's
for those
the
people
dog,
who don't know.
Yeah. Mercedes had a big day yesterday for press that involved multiple roundtables with all of their top people. And then in the evening, a big party to celebrate the launch of the electric G-Wagon. It's called the G580 with EQ technology, which is the most awkward and terrible name. But that is the actual name, but we're just going to call it the electric G.
Well, you can also just call it the G580, and that, I think, makes more sense because they use the 580 powertrain already in the S-Class, and there's a GLS 580.
That's basically the power rating is, like, yes.
580 horsepower.
Yeah, it's like 579, but basically, yes. So they have an awkward name. We'll call it the G580 for our purposes. And they throw it in this huge park off of Mulholland called Franklin Canyon Park. It's technically in Beverly Hills. It's sort of where Coldwater Canyon and Mulholland meet. And there's a big reservoir. It's an amazing park, and it's amazing. It's got amazing trails and dog runs and everything. Yeah. I went to the round tables during the day. I go home, I change clothes, I put on a warm coat and a hat, and, bring the dog, because it's an outdoor big dog park, and it ends up being basically a Travis Scott concert.
What?
In the park. First of all, Bradley Cooper was there, Trevor Noah was there, Tracy Ellis Ross, Evan Ross, like George Russell. It's like a LA party. And They bring out the G-Wagon. They've built a bridge on the reservoir. They first wanted to make it so that the G would roll out under like 2 inches of water. But I guess the logistics for that didn't work. So they built a bridge, and the G rolls out finally after an hour of swirling champagne and everything. And of course, Willow loved it. She's a German dog at a German car launch, so she loved it. But they finally bring it out, and it's like there's all this smoke on the water, and Travis Scott gets out and starts like doing a full-on Coachella style performance. I mean, they might as well have just launched this thing at Coachella, because that's, at this point, that's the direction we were going.
And Coachella is like now, right?
Yeah, last weekend. He's standing on the car, like it's quite loud. So we actually didn't stay very long because honestly, for Willow's ears, I was a little concerned. It was past her bedtime, and she wasn't in the right frame of mind for a Travis Scott concert.
That is.
But it was a big bash, and I think, honestly, it reminded me of in 2018 when they unveiled the new generation of the G-Wagon in this huge old theater in Detroit, and they had pyrotechnics, and Arnold Schwarzenegger was there. And that was the single best car launch I've ever been to in my life. It was so cool. And I think that they were like going for that effect with this one too. I'm not sure it was quite on the same level, but it was a spectacle. It was quite something.
It's so they're definitely doing nothing to get away from the kind of rapper, Kardashian, and drug dealers like drive G classes.
In the U.S.
Well, in Germany too. I had the G500, which here is the G550, and by the way, those are the same car, so I don't understand why they have different monikers. But anyway, out there, everybody who drives one, you're basically either mobbed up or like you're a rapper, right? It's the same kind of image that I guess it has in LA, which is unfortunate because it's such a cool utilitarian vehicle, but it's so expensive that it's, you've got to mortgage your house and sell a kidney to afford one.
You know what I always used to say, and this is just an aside, but even, for years I would say, I love Porsche. It's too bad about the people who own Porsches. And it's not fair that this amazing machine has been co-opted by like people you don't want to hang out with, because it's a really cool car and you shouldn't judge the car based on the people who buy it. And I think this might also apply for the G as well, because it's a total killer machine and yet has a certain reputation in certain enclaves.
Right.
But that's not going to stop me from recognizing that it's amazing.
Well, I will say, first of all, people like Magnus have changed that for Porsche. And there hasn't been anyone like that to change it for the G-Class,
Yeah. I mean, it'll be really interesting to see. See how the electric G does. And
yeah, let's get to the specs, because I think there's been so much hate, as you pointed out, but when I look through the specs, it looks really cool. There's a different motor for every wheel. There's 4 E-diffs. So, and there's only 3 locking diffs on the gas G-Wagon. And it can like spin around on a dime.
Yes, it is actually more capable off-road than the conventional engine G-Wagon. I drove it last year. I will lay down that bragging right. I drove the pre-production prototype. I drove it in Austria. It is wildly capable. There's nothing to laugh about. This is a very extremely capable machine. The question really is whether people want it. I mean, it doesn't. First of all, the vast majority of people who buy a G-Wagon are not going to be taking it off-road anyway. So the fact that it's slightly more capable than the combustion engine G-Wagon is a nice bragging right. But practically speaking, I'm not convinced that a lot of G-Wagon owners will care about that. The big question for me with Mercedes is, how flexible are you guys going to be if 6 months from now you realize nobody wants this thing?
Right.
We've seen the electric Hummer and the electric F-150 make big splashes when they debut, and then they sort of quietly fade to black because nobody's buying them. I'm not convinced that in a year from now we may sort of see the electric G fade. This is maybe a prediction. I don't know.
I think it fords more water than the gas G-Wagon. It's very capable. I think it's fascinating. But obviously, you make a great point that people who buy them typically aren't taking them off road because they're so expensive. You don't want to dent it.
And Mercedes is saying, well, this is a great application for hunters because it's very quiet and you can take it out. Take the G-Wagon hunting, which I understand in Germany and Austria, there may be a lot of G-Wagon owners who are taking their G
that is true.
Hunting. But Beverly Hills specifically is the biggest G-Wagon market and the biggest G-Wagon state and the biggest G-Wagon country in the world. And I don't hear a lot of G-Wagon owners saying they're taking it hunting.
Well, I guess, it's going to be soccer moms and soccer dads who are extremely wealthy. And this way they can signal 2 things to their neighbors. A, I have a lot of money. And B, I care about the environment because I bought an EV. So
and let's say the starting price is around $152,000. I think, there are AMG version, night package versions, exclusive manufacturer versions that will be even more costly. So this is an expensive machine already. If you take out the Maybachs in the Mercedes lineup, the G-Wagon is their most expensive offering already. There's a lot of profit that Mercedes makes off of this vehicle. They say that they expect that they will be making profit also off the electric version. But they also, every executive I spoke with yesterday was very careful to say, we're listening to our customers, we're maintaining flexibility. The G is made on the same line in the same factory as the electric one and the conventionally powered one. They're all on the same line, so they can sort of easily move it on or off the line as needed. And I think that's by design.
152 grand to start isn't as shocking as it would have been pre-pandemic, considering the insane amount of car price inflation we've seen. The base Carrera, which doesn't even come with a limited slip differential, is 115 grand. Before you add, obviously you have to add options. That's the way Porsche works. So you don't get to build a base that's drivable until it's like 140. The Carrera T, which is supposed to be the affordable version, is 125 before you've added anything. So
that's a lot of money.
So 152 doesn't sound quite as bad as it once would have. By the way, I drove a car that offends everybody in the neighborhood and costs way more to start. The Lamborghini Huracan Sterrato I had for the last week. You've driven this. I'm pretty sure I read your piece on it like a year or two ago.
Yes.
It's like supposed to be the off-road version of the Huracan, which is really their most track-focused vehicle. So it's like the off-road version of their race car. I
don't think I would agree with the fact that the Huracan is the most track-focused. I think that could be maybe the Aventador, I would argue. I would say the Huracan is actually the one that you drive when you want to stay in town.
I spent a lot of time at numerous driving schools in both, and the Aventador is very big with clunky agricultural transmission.
Like a tractor?
To hustle that thing around the track is a lot more difficult than the Huracan. I think the STO is probably the one that they would tell you, Huracan STO, if you're going to go to the track. But they're both amazing. This car, I think, was the most fun, the most exhilarating driving experience I have ever had in my life.
How can you say that with a car that has cladding on it and a rack?
I'll tell you why. And by the way, when they first brought it to my driveway, it's bright yellow, which I don't know who buys a yellow car to begin with. But plus it's got this plastic cladding drilled onto it that looks like, somebody picked it up at the AutoZone and bolted on, the driving lights himself. And then it's got a tire rack on top, which kind of looks cool, but when you're driving, it makes a lot of noise, and it's like...
It might look better with a different color than yellow.
Definitely would look better in a different color than yellow, but I'm just saying, like, my first text message to you from driving it to pickleball was, I would rather have a regular Huracan. I don't know why they did this. But... The
sentence, driving the Lamborghini to pickleball alone is problematic.
Very fast. But I will tell you, after a few days with it, I realized the benefit of the off-road Lambo, and it's not really for off-road. In fact, the loan agreement said I was not allowed to take it off-road.
Did you actually read the agreement, or they physically
That was
told you?
Highlighted. That part was highlighted in yellow.
Oh.
The point it's got an extra 1.7 inches of travel, and it's got beefier suspension. And what it does is it makes the car really usable in the Northeast, where our roads, our infrastructure over this country are decaying. And this is the kind of like post-apocalyptic supercar that you need, because I was not worried about potholes. I was like aiming for them. I took it to the oldest unpaved road in America.
How was that?
It was awesome. It's this like Revolutionary War era road in Phillipstown. It's like 7 miles long, and you might as well be off-road, frankly. But it is a legal road, so I felt like I was sticking to the letter of the law.
Now, was it dirt? It's dirt, or it's gravel, or what's the actual...
It depends which stretch you're on. It's dirt and gravel.
Okay.
And it was really cool. I recommend that everybody who's around here take a chance to visit. It's called the Old Albany Post Road up in Phillipstown, New York. Anyway, I realized that this car is, like, normally when you're in a supercar, right, you're in them more than I am, you're kind of worried about,
it's stressful.
Am I going to break this? The suspension is very taut.
Yes.
And this was not that. I was very happily throwing it through this gravel road. And then when I was driving it on the highway, as I say, not worried about the potholes. The cool thing about the off-road tires is they lose traction more quickly than typical road tires, so you could throw it around corners and kick out the back end.
That's so fun.
You can put it in a special rally mode setting, which makes the rear end a little bit more slippery. And it's just an amazing experience to have 5.2 liters of V10 behind you. It's so loud and raucous. It's so brutal. It's exactly what a Lamborghini should be, in my opinion.
Yeah, I like it because you have the Lamborghini performance, but you get to drive it like you'd drive something that was a lot less expensive and a lot just rough.
Yeah.
So it's like, it is a really fun combination. If I got one, I would not have the rack on it, and I'd get one in like a green, like a dark green or a gray or something really,
Agreed, 100%.
toned down.
Army green is what you want.
Completely, yeah. And I would just really, then you could actually say that it's a daily driver. Because you could drive that in the city.
I was thinking this is the perfect daily driver.
Yeah.
And I even did drive it into the city for a lunch here. Now, the problems start to arise when you try and deal with the connectivity. Well, first of all, I should say the rear view mirror, because you cannot see out the back.
No,
Since they raise the air scoop like a snorkel, and it covers completely the back window. Now, when other car companies put out a vehicle where the rear window is closed, like Chevy does with their trucks, for example, they install a rear view camera in the mirror, right? Yes. Lamborghini said, we won't bother, right? We're only going to charge $300,000, so why would we spend the money to put a rear view camera in the mirror? The other thing is the connectivity. It took me like maybe 15 minutes to finally hook my phone up. Not that it matters, right? But if you're daily driving it, it kind of does, because on the way back from lunch in the city, I was stuck in bumper-to-bumper traffic, and I thought, all right, let me listen to this Dead show that I have on my phone. It took me forever to figure out how to hook it up. When I finally did, the Bluetooth crapped out because...
It matters, yeah.
If they know that everyone is going to buy this vehicle no matter how much it costs, then they maybe aren't bothering to put in the effort in terms of quality control on the tech side. But
that's
wouldn't
a really
that be
bad sign.
Wouldn't it be easy for them since they're owned by Audi?
Yeah, I mean, bottom line, I don't care what the actual vehicle is. If you are charging that much money for it, it has to be really good all throughout. The fit and finish, the infotainment, the software, it all has to be good. And this is a problem I've had with McLaren too, where it's like, you can't just say, oh, it's sort of a track car, and well, that's not our thing. You know, you just give them stuff that is kind of crappy.
Yeah, I agree. That I would say it's unacceptable for a $300,000 car, which you're not going to get for less than $4 million, because after you add options and the dealers charge the ADM, and you know those are already sold out because they're limited to 1,500 models. But the problem is people are going to buy it anyway because it's such an exhilarating and really like life-changing experience to drive this vehicle.
Really fun.
All right, let's ask our listeners, which would you rather have, the Lamborghini Huracan Sterrato, the off-road Lambo, or the Porsche 911 Dakar, the off-road 911? They can email us with their answer at
hotpursuit@bloomberg.net. That's hotpursuit@bloomberg.net. Let us know. Now, I'm very curious to know what you think about this hybrid Urus, because I know you love hybrids, but I also know that Urus is not necessarily your favorite Lamborghini. So
a Lamborghini should be overkill. It should be brutal. You know, at least
have you driven the
10
Urus?
cylinders. I've driven the Urus a number of times. I drove it in Modena when I was there for the Motor Valley Week, which I also highly recommend. What an awesome experience that is. And I drove it here in New York as well, and it's great, right? I'd rather have an Urus.
I think it's so good. It's the best SUV out there.
Yeah.
I think it's the actual best SUV out there right now.
You may be, driving. I feel like the Cayenne is also very good, but...
It's very good, but it's not a Lamborghini.
Right. Well, I don't think the Urus is a Lamborghini. Where's that motor from? It's an Audi Group motor. It's not the kind of motor that makes people angry with you, you know?
I'll give you that it's not a Huracan or an Aventador, but I will stick to my gun saying that in terms of driving performance and thrill, it's the best it's the best SUV on the market right now. If you want an SUV, it's the best of the bunch.
You're probably right. It looks cool.
It's so good.
It's super
so
functional.
good.
The tech in it, unlike the Huracan, the tech works.
Yeah, it hauls too. It's so fast, and I'm not like you. I don't get hung up on who makes an engine. If it's a good engine, it's a good engine.
True, but the thing is, the Urus, I can drive my parents in it to the airport, and it'll be fun for them, but not shocking, right? With the Huracan and the Aventador, I'm getting goosebumps. I'm sometimes tearing up. Like, it is an incredibly visceral experience that has the...
Are they tears of joy or fear?
I mean, it's just that I feel like I've gone through a transformation. It's changed my mental state, and that doesn't happen with... What's the engine in the Urus? Like a 4-liter V8 with twin turbochargers? Come on.
Does the same thing happen for you in a Ferrari? Do you get emotional in a Ferrari?
You know, I haven't really driven many Ferraris. I've only driven the FF, which I loved. And yeah, it made me pretty emotional, but I don't remember this kind of feeling.
I mean, to hear about tears...
And the LaFerrari, I drove like around a parking lot. But I haven't spent much time in Ferrari, so I don't feel qualified to say. But I don't know if they would evoke the same kind of like hair-raising experience that the brutal Lambo motors do.
I understand. I mean, back to the hybrid. I think the real interesting thing, talking about engines and combustion, is that Lamborghini has been really unapologetic about saying, we don't actually want to go electric. We'll give you a hybrid, but we're going to basically stall as long as we can toward going fully electric. I asked them yesterday, are you still making that all-electric Lanzador? And they said, yes, they're still on board with that. But I just think bottom line is Lamborghini, it's the exact opposite of Mercedes, which is going all in, all electric. They're going to electrify everything, even their jewel, the G-Wagon. And Lamborghini's like, no way. We're holding on to our engines as long as possible. We'll give you a hybrid, and they're saying we're doing great. We don't need an electric vehicle.
I mean, I appreciate that, but it's like Sergio Marchionne used to say, there is no way in hell that Ferrari is ever going to make an SUV.
Yeah, used to say that.
And they eventually did.
Of course.
And I think Lamborghini could go the same way. We'll have the benefit of asking the CEO of Lamborghini.
Ooh, yes.
On our next episode, Stefan Winkleman joins us. But let me ask you finally one more question on the Sterrato. Do you think, and this is the question I got asked the most by people looking at this car, and by the way, everybody looked at it, everybody's taking pictures of it, people asking me questions. But the main question I got from people who know things about cars was, would you rather have this than the Dakar, the 911 Dakar?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I would, just to be contrarian. It's less expected. As a woman, I want the thing that's like more of a punch in the face.
Totally agree. To me, it's so silly to compare a 3-liter flat six with turbochargers to a naturally aspirated 5.2-liter V10. I mean, it is definitely
it's
a punch
wilder
in the face.
Beast. It's on every angle. It's a wilder beast. It's more bossy. It's more everything, and I want all of it.
Yeah, I will never forget the first time I went to Formula One in Austin. I was on a press junket, and so I got to be with the Red Bull team, and Christian Horner said, I wish we were back. We would go back to the V10s because that is the kind of engine that he would prefer to race with. And speaking of that, we should get to our guest. Tyler, thank you so much for coming. Great to have you here, and we're looking very much forward to the race. I've been cramming, watching every season of Drive to Survive, and I'm almost at the end of 6. So I still haven't started with this season. And Hannah, you've been following along, so why don't you kick it off?
Well, I have to say, I met Tyler a few months ago in Miami during Moto Miami, a car show that's there, and I was really excited to talk to him because, Tyler, I know you come from a sports background, but then before that, also a car background. And it was so great to talk with someone who I think has a really good sense of specifically what Americans want out of their car racing / sporting events. And I kind of just, to kick it off, would love to hear about how are you doing 2 weeks before the race? You don't seem stressed, but tell me a little bit about what's going on right now in your life.
Yeah, look, thank you for the time. Great to be with you both. I'm not stressed. I'm excited. We've got a great team of people here, and as strange as it sounds, I think we've learned a lot in the first 2 years. And so, I was laughing with a friend of mine the other day. Going into year one, we didn't know. We didn't know what to expect. We didn't know what we were to be scared of, and so we were just kind of going into it. And last year we knew a little better. So it was a little more nervous, and we had some things to fix. And I would tell you, one of the things I love about this team here is that when something doesn't go right, we're not scared to attack it, right? And if it's something on track or it's something off track, we make it front and center and we attack it with everything we have. And we believe in our people and believe in our resources. And so when you have a team like that and you have a culture like that, there's nothing to be nervous about. We're more just excited to put on a great show for the entire F1 community and showcase what Miami has to offer. So we're excited. It's busy. It's crazy. I mean, look, we build up this entire campus and it goes all down, and you're talking 300 plus tents and tens of thousands of miles of cable, and it truly is amazing to see it all come together. But it's much more exciting than it's nerve-wracking, Hannah.
Are you approaching this like a sporting event or like a show? You use that word show.
Yeah, it's a great question.
Interesting.
I think, my background is all sporting personally. So I always think of it, like a sporting event. But I will tell you that the way that we try to attack our business from a customer-centric point of view, it's much more like a show. It's much more like an artist, I think. We do believe in the creativity of what Tom Garfinkel and Stephen Ross have led us from the very beginning on. They pushed us to be creative and to create a feeling and create a thing. We want our fans that when they come here, that we want them to feel like they are in Miami. That it should be an authentic experience. It should be that one-of-one experience where they feel like it was curated and cultivated specifically for them. So, yeah, it's a good question. I never thought of it necessarily that way about show versus sporting. It's in our world, it's all meshed together.
It's very Miami, maybe.
Yeah. Everything we do here between, Super Bowls and World Cups and Dolphins football and stadium shows and festivals, it's everything from our sports entertainment lens is really intermingled anyway.
You got to create the show, right? Because the sporting event's going to happen whether you do a good job or not, Tyler, right? There's going to be a winner and a loser regardless. But when spectators come and pay big bucks to watch, they want to have the whole experience be there for them. Tell us some of the superlatives. You mentioned 300 tents. What else? Like, how many people do you have working for you? How much do you put into this? How much does this event make?
Yeah, it's a great question, Matt. So I think the best way to think about it is we'll have over 10,000 people on staff on race weekend. We have less than 150 dedicated to the race annually. So our staff grows massively leading into the race. Now, we also get support from kind of our sister businesses here with the Dolphins and everything. And that internal staff balloons to around 500. We just walked out of our final staff meeting this morning, and it's about 500 people. But our event staff and the people who really make this business go, they're the ones who are getting people into the entries and making sure they find the right food and beverage and making sure they don't trip on that step right there and all those pieces. I mean, that's a 10,000 person staff. And I would tell you, it's one of the benefits, Matt, is that, those are almost all local people. We've driven almost $1 billion into this community over the last 2 years, and we are continuing to surge forward, right? So it's not only bringing tourists in and driving, tourism dollars, it's also creating experiences and growth for the people who live here and opportunity for them to earn wages. One of the things we're really proud about, just from a community perspective, is, we've got a dozen community-based food trucks brought on site to create really unique experiences for our fan base that are locally based, right? So these are food trucks that operate right here in Miami Gardens, and we have the opportunity to showcase them. So yeah, look, it's thousands and thousands of man hours leading into the race. There's a lot of late nights, a lot of early mornings. As much as we try to get ahead, I would tell you the last couple of weeks are always a thrash. No matter how far we try and let's get ahead of this one and get this up. And it feels like the last 10 days are always just a unique time.
Tyler, something we talked about in Miami the last time we spoke is this idea that Formula One is extremely elitist and very exclusive. And I don't think that's an unfair reputation, really. But you spoke about...
That's the draw.
Yeah, that's part of the draw. Once you're in, you feel like you're inside. But you spoke about wanting Miami to be a race that really feels inclusive for families or people who may not be balling out on like a hotel suite. Can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, is that actually a realistic thing for you guys, and how are you approaching it?
I mean, we've seen that to be true, Hannah. I mean, I can't tell you what the other Grand Prix do. And I think Matt's right in the sense that it is part of the brand of F1. I mean, I think Bernie Ecclestone and his team, dating back now into the 70s, really created this incredible kind of environment. And look, I think, Greg Maffei and Stefano Domenicali are still cultivating that. However, I do think as we push into new markets, we have the opportunity. I've got neighbors who love coming to the race, and they buy campus passes and they come out and they spend $150 a day. And we push a ton of value into those amenities, and we put risers in, and we have shade structures, and we have water stations, and we try to make it comfortable for them. We open up our 300 level of our stadium with a view into the actual paddock. There are things that we do or we're trying to do that really offer what we would consider to be a more general fan the opportunity to come and experience what F1 has to offer as a sport and entertainment property. I mean, look, we think about it as, there's 99% of the F1 fans may not ever come to see us. Right. So we have to showcase that on TV. But for that group that does come and we have the opportunity to host, gosh, we want to nail that experience for them in a really unique way. And I think that goes everybody from the billionaire kind of elite group that is kind of come to be commonplace with F1. But it's all the way down to, the people that live down the street from me who bring their kids because they love cars and they've really enjoyed getting to know F1 through Drive to Survive.
I mean, the first time I went to F1 in Austin at COTA, I had never thought about Austin before, but because of that experience, I started going back to Austin again and again,
shady.
Even when it wasn't for, well, I mean, I had heard of Austin, but it was not, on my radar. Obviously, Miami is going to be on everybody's radar, but it must be the same way, right? If somebody comes down to Miami for the first time to see F1 and they have an amazing time, they're going to keep coming back to Miami for other events, not racing related.
Totally. And I think we felt the support of the community these past couple of years. I mean, not only just Miami Gardens, but our friends in Miami, our friends in Fort Lauderdale, and even in Hollywood and up to West Palm. Like, this is a dynamic part of the world. And part of our job is to bring people in. It's interesting because we do see a significant, especially Latin population coming in, especially from Latin America, from Mexico. We do see some European, and it's very heavy domestic too. We draw from everywhere. We talk to our friends in Vegas about this all the time, that they draw from the East Coast, we draw from the West Coast. It's not necessarily geographical. It's much more about what markets a certain person wants to go visit. But obviously the I-95 corridor is healthy for us, right? Like the New York draw, there's a lot of New Yorkers down here. So it's a comfortable place, and it's become, such a massive brand, the city itself, where we benefit from that.
You mentioned Las Vegas. Is there a bit of a healthy competition between Vegas and Miami Grand Prix?
I get asked this all the time. I don't feel that way. I mean, I probably don't talk to a promoter more than maybe Mexico, but other than Mexico, I probably don't talk to a promoter more than we talk to the people in Vegas. Renee Williams does such a good job. Greg Maffei obviously leads that from Liberty Media perspective, and look, we're very friendly with Austin as well. They were very good to us early on. They taught us, things we never would have known about getting into year one. And I do think there's some good camaraderie between the three of us. We all create totally different experiences. They're very, very different and unique, each in their own right.
How is Miami different from Vegas, would you say?
I just think we're about Miami. I mean, I think we're about the art, we're about the culture, we're about the food, we're about the experience, we're about palm trees and really curated experience for the different product. I think there are certainly pieces of that. And I think we get branded together around our high-end hospitality. And I think Vegas did a wonderful job of many things, including that last year. I think we can benefit from that because all boats benefit on with the rising tide. And that's how we look at it. But I do think we have really, and again, Tom and Steve set this forth from the very beginning, that we want to be about Miami and we want to represent everything that this great city and community has to offer.
Let's talk a little bit about the sport. You must be a fan so this is a podcast without a video component. And that means our listeners don't see the helmets behind you. You've got Niki Lauda, you've got James Hunt, you've got Senna. I don't see Schumi, but he's probably out of the picture. You've got the greatest drivers in F1 ever. How do you feel about F1? Where's your heart when it comes to the competition?
Yeah, like as I told Hannah, when we were together in Miami, my first 10 years of my professional career were all cars and all motorsport. And so that's kind of where I cut my teeth in this business. And it's still like a deep passion for me. So I believe in great racing. I believe in the quality of the teams and the drivers. And it's certainly something I tune into across all series on a regular basis. Look, I think what we have to think about, we are truly seeing, what's a very special situation with, what Red Bull's doing and what obviously Max is doing. Is it necessarily the most competitive environment we've ever seen? I think it's hard to argue that. I tend to, as more of a purist, really appreciate what's being done. I think it's the best car with the best driver, and it's on a unique situation right now. So we are great partners of F1, and we're all for the growing business. And I think there are things that we'll work together with all the rest of the promoters and Formula One in general to continue to keep it interesting. We have a great appreciation for what's happening on the track right now.
But does it hurt the business if Max keeps winning every race?
I don't know that. I can't predict that. I can tell you that our business is really healthy, and I think that I see the business somewhat through my 9-year-old son's eyes, who only wears flat bill hats, and he's a Red Bull fan because of that, right? And so that's his angle.
Everyone
right?
loves
and so
a winner.
I see it through his eyes, and I haven't seen his interest wane. Now, look, I think the casual fan, is it harder for them to stay tuned in when you have a dominant situation on track? I think that's a fair criticism, and we've got to continue as an industry to keep working at that. But that shouldn't have anything to do with disparaging the tremendous accomplishments that Max and the rest of the Red Bull Racing Group are putting
True.
through.
Hannah, what do you think about it? Because, Max is awesome, and the Red Bull team has been so sweet to follow over the past 10 years.
Yeah.
You can't begrudge them the success, right?
No, I'm looking forward to when Lewis Hamilton goes to Ferrari. I think that'll be a really interesting thing. I love a shakeup. And, people love a winner, but people also love rooting for underdogs. And personally, I would be excited if Lewis finally got that last championship. I'm rooting for him. I also saw George Russell last night at Mercedes G-Wagon launch. So I would like to see some other people on the top of the podium, for sure. I think that's healthy. It's good for the business. I want to see a fight. And yes, Verstappen is a very talented driver, but I would love to see, I think it's healthy to get some other people in there, for sure.
And a fight at the front. I think that's an important note, right? Because I think the midfield battle right now is outstanding. And if you're a fan of the sport and you see the competition that's occurring between McLaren and Mercedes and Ferrari and
even Aston Martin, I'm actually pretty curious.
Yeah, so I think the midfield competition is fantastic. I saw my wife sent me a meme the other day, and it was somebody showing the running order and somebody going over and just putting a black piece of tape over Max and starting to clap, right?
Yes.
Because when you look at second through seventh, it's actually fantastic. It's fantastic competition.
It's really interesting because I remember talking to Sergio Perez at the first Austin Grand Prix 10 years ago, 11 years ago, 12 years ago. And he was not, people from Mexico knew him, but he was not as well known as he is today. And so it's just been really fun to see people advance from way deep into the pack to the front.
But by the way, I think that's what Drive to Survive has done so well, because I have been watching MotoGP religiously for over a decade, and I feel like I know everything about the sport, but I never know who's in the midfield battles because I'm watching the podium or the top 5 or 6. And even though I'm watching free practice, qualifying, and the races, the cool thing about Drive to Survive is you get a break from the top and they focus in on the midfield, and that makes it just a much more holistic experience. How much has that helped, Tyler, you think, your business, Drive to Survive?
Yeah, it's hard to put a number on it, right? But I don't think you can argue the impact, right? Tremendous impact. The storytelling and taking what's actually happening inside the paddock and storytelling about it and actually putting guys in situations and, and talking with some of the team principals now, hearing them talk about their reluctance at the beginning and now how comfortable they are with it. Listening to Zach talk about it, it's fantastic. It is changed his entire brand personally. We spent a bunch of time with Gunther over the past month, and we've hired him to help us kind of make sure we're an authentic Grand Prix. He's fantastic. He's great. Yeah. He's so authentic. He's so real. And he comes at it not from, I've won all these championships. He comes at it from I am grinding. My sleeves are rolled up. Let me tell you about this business. And I think it's back to the question about the elitist. It's for everybody. There is a place for everybody in the sport.
Where do you see the biggest growth potential for your business?
So I think I'd answer it 2 ways. First and foremost, continuing to lean into this young F1 fan base. And that doesn't mean that there aren't long-term F1 fans here. There are. There's fans have been watching F1 for decades. But I do think when we think about the Drive to Survive and the social media pieces, I think that fan base tends to be a bit younger or at least newer to the sport. That's probably our number one opportunity, is to make our event sticky with the growth of F1. Right. Let's make Miami something special for that group of people
that they want to do locally, every year.
Yeah, if they want to put it on their bucket list and say, we love F1, we love Miami, we are doing this every year. We're circling the date as soon as the schedule comes out, and we're going to go down and get our friends together and do this thing. Right. So I think that's the first opportunity. The second opportunity is a lot more what we talked about when we were at Moto together, which is there is a wonderful auto car culture down here in South Florida.
Yeah.
But it's a bit bifurcated. There's not really a place where everybody comes together. And I think we have the opportunity over the next couple of years as a circuit, as kind of Miami International Autodrome, which nobody knows, nor should they. But it's to be an actual thing. It's to be a place where people come and they can express their cars with their bikes or whatever it may be, that it's a motor racing, epicenter, and really base it around one of the most dynamic communities and cities in the world.
So what is the car culture like in Miami? I've only been on a motorcycle down there. I imagine there's some big supercars. You say it's bifurcated. Tell us about it.
I'll give you the best example I can give you is you'll roll down to get ice cream with your kids on Friday night, and you'll pull into a parking lot on a side of a strip mall, because we're in Florida, and there's just a mini car convention going on. And then you go down the street and there's another one in a little group of people parked together with their Corvettes. And then there's another down the street that is a little bit of a bike rally. And it's very community based. It's not necessarily mass market, but it's very brand driven, brand specific. But there are groups of car enthusiasts who are getting together, who are driving, and who are passionate about their cars. I just think we're not necessarily overtly tapping into that.
The thing that I find about Miami with car culture is it's a little bit more hidden. There's not great driving in Miami. Of course, you can drive over the bridges, and tell me if you disagree, but I don't find amazing driving roads. But if you're looped into whatever car tribe you love, you kind of just hear word of mouth. Hey, we're meeting here. Hey, we're going to drive here. Hey, we're going to do this Saturday morning or Friday night. You just have to keep your ear to the ground. It's not obvious, but once you get tapped in, it's everywhere.
Yeah, I think that is accurate, Hannah. I do think we have the opportunity to get in the middle of that, right? I mean, if we could ever create a situation where we are a place where you can come and drive. You are a place where we could open up portions of our circuit to give it that place where you can come and get an experience in your car that is different from what you get on your daily drive. I think it's an opportunity for us. That's certainly how we see it.
By the way, to just digress a little, Hannah, you spent so much time in New York, so much time in LA. You've spent a lot of time in Miami as well. Do you see very different car cultures in different regions of this country?
Definitely. Yeah. New York is actually, I would say, the most diehard, because New York is such a difficult place to have a special car, whether it's an old car or a new car. If it's a special car, it's really difficult. It's expensive. The weather's horrible. You don't want to bring it in the city really, but then maybe you want to. I mean, there are a lot of logistical issues. It's tough for finding mechanics. It's tough for finding parts, the whole thing. So New York is really diehard. Those are people who are going to suffer for the love of cars. In Southern California, it's really easy. You can pick up any old car. It's almost too much. You find yourself coming in contact with old stuff and cool stuff. It's too easy to acquire cars. Space is not as an issue. Weather is good. There are mechanics on every corner. It's just so easy and lazy. But it's also the center of the car world. I mean, Mercedes just had their biggest launch in a couple years here last night. And then Miami, and Tyler, tell me what you think, but I sense a really exciting and cool South American contingent that keep cars in Miami. When I've been to Argentina and Mexico City and other places in Mexico, the wealthy collectors that I have spoken with all keep cars in Miami. Maybe they don't live in Miami full time, but they keep a lot of things in Miami. The vibe is just extremely international, way more international than LA feels, which I love about I love how international and in tune with the world's car culture that Miami feels to me. Big Porsche community in Miami, like massive. I was just at DRT, and then there was a big Porsche thing at Moto Miami too. So that's my take.
A huge Porsche contingent, huge Ferrari contingent. I was fortunate enough to have dinner last week with John Hennessy, and I had such an interesting conversation with him about where his customers are and where his customers are growing. And he has a huge number of customers in South Florida and then up and down the Florida coast. So, and I think when you start to get the Hennessy collector and the Bugatti collector mixed in with the Ferrari collector, mixed in with the Porsche aficionado, like that's so Miami. And you're exactly right. That Latin American influence is so real. And there are some amazing private collections here.
Yes.
That you would never know. You drive right by, you drive on Biscayne Boulevard and there's, here's some office building. No, there's $100 million worth of cars sitting in that building.
Completely.
It's super interesting.
Yeah, I love it. And it does feel like it's like the storage portion itself is not flashy or showy. You're exactly right. You can drive past like just strip mall looking things and it's wild what's hidden behind. And I do think like people like Curated, John Tamarian, John Hennessy, who we just had on as well. You're right. Like the appetite also for not just classic Porsches and stuff, but like obviously Ferraris, supercars is obviously that's Miami too.
In terms of Porsche, I'll tell people who aren't dedicated to the brand, DRT stands for Das Renntreffen, which is the German, the race meeting.
You're our resident German translator.
I also had to look that up because you said DRT and I was like, what's that? Tyler, what do you think the chances are of an American team doing well or an American team like Andretti? Andretti makes so much sense to me, and I don't really know why they weren't allowed to get a team now, but hopefully they will down the road. I mean, I feel like that would do more for F1 in this country than anything else, or an American driver as well.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think first and foremost, we have one, right? We do have, an American-owned team with Haas. I think the difference is they're not based here. They don't operate necessarily out of the States, but going through would be quick to correct you in the sense that there is an American owner.
Well, I mean, an American team with a German name, their headquarters are in England, their drivers are Scandinavian.
Totally fair.
Semantics,
and then look,
really.
We do have a local boy, right? I mean, Logan Sargent, carrying the flag for the United States right now on the grid. And I know it's been a struggle a bit, last year and then even early this year. But he's a Fort Lauderdale kid. I mean, he's from 25 minutes from our circuit. So we kind of root for him and have got a great relationship with him and his family. But I can't deny, Matt, the opportunity for continued American influence, both in ownership and behind the wheel. I think there's multiple examples in other sports of having that strong American presence. But I would say this, I think just having an American-owned team or an American behind the wheel doesn't also ensure growth in America, right? I think we have an obligation as a stakeholder in the sport to continue to cultivate the experience at the racetrack, make sure the broadcast is fantastic and interesting, to make sure that the racing is fantastic, to make sure the storytelling around what's actually happening inside the paddock is broadcast in a way that people can absorb. So look, we're always for growth. We're always for continued opportunity. And certainly we care a lot about the US F1 fan. I'm just not sure it's quite that simple. If the Andrettis were to get a team, all of a sudden our business spikes immediately. Certainly we're supportive of Mario Michael and Dan Towers and everybody on that team, but I wish it was that linear. I'm just not sure it is.
Tyler, I'm curious, do you have any best practices or hacks that you can share with people in terms of going to Formula One races? I mean, you see how it is from the inside out, and as someone who has been to races and loves them, I also hate and dread the logistics of it. It's like always painful parking and walking and trying to find where to go, like
trying to find a good
help
seat.
Us. Yeah, just help us, like tell us how to hack a Formula One race or Miami specifically so it's not so painful.
The first hack is to not be what we are traditionally as impatient customers, right? Like embrace the fact that this isn't a 2-hour thing. You're not getting in and out. This isn't a hockey game. You're going to have a day of it, right? And embrace that.
Okay, so recalibrate.
Yeah, you have to almost recalibrate exactly what's real there, right? So that's the first thing. And again, we've now had the opportunity to go all over the world and do this, right? So I think there's no hack. The only hack is
a helicopter
making sure the promoter
right
knows you and can get you in a different way. And there's a couple of hacks in the Middle East that those guys can take care of you really well.
I bet.
But
well, Tyler, what about this? If you were going to the race and you didn't run it and you didn't know anybody involved, where would you sit to see with the best for the best view of the action? Because you can always only see like one or two corners, right? And that's always my problem. I end up wanting to get up and move around, and then I miss the whole race. So where would you sit?
I'm going to give you two answers, but they're connected. So I would sit on the far west end of the start-finish grandstand, in the highest corner I could get, because in our grandstand, you can look over the backside or around the corner. You can see the cars going into 17, around 18, into 19. The finish line is right in front of you, and right to your left is the starting grid. So you get a good chunk of the racetrack.
That's good.
You also get pit in, you also get pit lane, and I think it's just a beautiful area of the racetrack. So it's shaded, and it'd be my favorite spot. But I wouldn't sit there the whole time. I'm like you. Like, I would wander our campus, right? I would get to see the different spots. There are viewing decks all over our race circuit. And this is something that we're trying to get people to do, but like, go up inside the stadium. Both the south helixes are open. Go up to the top and get a view from up there, because you see both different ends of the racetrack from there. The only thing you really can't see from those two ends are the front stretch, which is where I'd be sitting on the start-finish grandstand. And I can't see all the way to the beach, right? But other than that, I'm going to go get 4 or 5 different locations every day to see the cars handling differently.
Nice.
Cool.
Getting into the pits or getting a tour of pit lane, is that possible for a regular person, or?
Pits are harder. I mean, pit lane and the paddock are controlled by an F1. You know, it's funny because, my early days in NASCAR, pit lane's open, or at least it is for a portion of the day. I mean, I remember that one of the first years I went to Daytona, there were people like running around on the racetrack. And I'm like,
fans?
What?
Spectators.
Fans running around on the racetrack. And I'm like, what is happening? And it turns out like this is something that they do. Like that's how they get to their seats. It's an open pit lane. I mean, it's amazing. And look, good for them. That unfortunately is not necessarily the cultural relevance of Formula One in this particular case. So, but I will say that we really work hard to try to make sure that we are one of the only circuits that offer your general admission campus pass buyer a view of the paddock. You have a view of kind of getting into the garages a little bit and seeing what those team hospitalities look like. We had a group sitting in the 300 level of the stadium under a shaded area that was camped out there last year. And every time a Ferrari driver would walk by, they would start cheering. And it got to the place where every time Leclerc or Sainz would walk anywhere, they'd look up and they'd wave. And so, amazing. I mean, they're cool little moments that I think people connect to, but you're doing it from a bit away before you're not getting into the paddock, not necessarily with your campus pass ticket.
All right, so the weather, I imagine, will be fine, right? It's not going to be rainy or cold. What tires do you think everyone's going to choose? Do you have that kind of inside knowledge?
I mean, I don't think we know yet. One of the pieces of feedback we did last year, and again, Steve and Tom were super supportive in letting us kind of resurface the top lift of the racetrack last year because we weren't happy with how it performed. And then we came back with a brand new slick racetrack going into year 2. So we basically had a brand new racetrack in year 1, a brand new racetrack again on the top lift in year 2. And some of the complaints we got were, you have to like give us some rubber, like lay some rubber down for us. So there's part of the reason why we added extra support series this year. So we have F1 Academy coming. We also have Porsche Carrera Cup cars back, and they're running before F1 hits the racetrack on Friday. So we're going to lay some rubber down and see if we can try to improve some of the way that the race cars are handling. My gut tells me it's still a newer racetrack, so I think it'll race even better than it did last year when we were happy with how it raced last year. But I think you'll have the opportunity to see some more competitive on-track action. Look, the softer tires are probably always going to lap better. My guess is the mediums will be the tire of choice for everybody here.
I could lay down some rubber there. My Challenger.
As a surface, yeah. Just, it's your good deed.
It's just, it's community service, man.
Yeah.
We appreciate your efforts.
Exactly.
What are you doing for traffic control? In some of the areas around the track, I know that was an issue in previous years with the residents being concerned about traffic control.
Yeah, so the residents have really been, look, rightfully so, they were concerned about it heading into the race. We'd never done it before. We're closing off a turnpike access road and an actual turnpike exit in order to pull this off. So it rightfully be worried about it. We've tried to be very cooperative. Generally, we've had fantastic support within the community. I think there are a couple things that we've learned. Number one is we're used to running big time 65,000 person stadium events at Hard Rock Stadium, right? We have thousands of spaces on site. We park most of the people on site. They come, they park their car, they go to the stadium, they get in the car and they leave. We're different, right? From an F1 perspective, where all those people are parking for F1, we have hospitality areas and grandstand spaces, right? So we have actually fairly limited parking actually on site. What we found though is the opportunity for us to like really focus on creating really good access to busing has been a huge win for us, right? Mm-hmm. So we put up a lot of time, a lot of effort into our busing systems. Mm-hmm. And we've got a full-on bus depot on the east side of our campus. It's easy in, easy out. We've got a good friend of mine took the bus route the first year. He hates buses, hates the concept of them, doesn't want to get out of his own car. He's like, but I said, you should take a look at it. He wanted to be a part of the beach. So we went down there, got a ticket, jumped on the bus after the race. He was home in like 38 minutes. Wow. After the race. Impressive. He left right after the race, was home in 38 minutes. And part of it, I think, was just because we put so much effort into like a system that pushed the cars away from the racetrack, right? The more cars you have shoving into the area right outside where people are trying to leave, that's where the congestion comes from. So we've worked really hard to keep the lots that are close by easy and walkable and a safe opportunity for our fans to get home. Anything that's, more than a mile away, you hop on a bus and you get there. And that's honestly been one of our most successful, traffic mitigation efforts.
So being a part of the beach makes me think about the other things to do down there. What are the parties or the restaurants or the events that you would tell people to go to other than just the race when they're coming down for the weekend? Do you have like a top 2 or 3? I
think one of the best events of the weekend is Carbone Beach. What Major Food Group does to put on, it's a 4-day, 4-night, it's really almost a festival. And it is fantastic food, fantastic entertainment. I would highlight that. I think a lot of the activations that the teams do, Red Bull always does a really good job. They pick a new spot each year and they come in and put together really, really great activations. But I would tell you that almost everything beachside, there's something going on almost everywhere. Hollywood does a big beach festival. Miami Beach does a big beach festival. There is action all up and down the beach side. So you can't miss heading east.
I know Ferrari's going to have some debuts too.
Ferrari's got big news. Launching a new car on Thursday night, I believe, and the cavalcade's coming from Nashville. And so there'll be a big Ferrari contingent here. And we become very close with a lot of their key people. So they've been a great partner and looking forward to doing more with them down the road.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to watching the race, Tyler. Thank you so much for joining us. And I know you're going to be the busiest beaver that there ever was. So I wish you good luck getting through it and hope you can relax a little after.
Yeah, thanks for the time, Matt and Hannah. Great to be with you. And
thanks, Tyler.
Appreciate all your support. We'll hopefully have a great weekend.
What are you doing this weekend, Matt?
I don't have any plans this weekend, actually.
You're not driving, no cars? No Lamborghinis?
No, actually, I have a break there's no press cars. So I'm ripping it up in my Dodge Challenger RT Scat Pack, whatever, and it's a blast to drive.
Home base, just ground yourself. You need to come off that high that you had, this emotional roller coaster.
It really took me like a solid 24 hours to get over that. It was incredible. But yeah, I don't have any plans this weekend. What about you?
Okay, I'm going to Spain to drive that Aston Martin Vantage.
What?
Yeah, that'll be fun. Seville.
Oh my God!
Wait, where's Mary You's people from?
She's from Pamplona, and her people are in Bilbao and Valencia, but we love Sevilla, or as the Americans call it correctly, Seville. We absolutely love it there. You can see some amazing flamenco performances while you're there.
Really?
Yes.
Ooh, I want to do that.
And I bet you will. And the other thing is, it's a great place to start a trip to Spain because you can go from there to Cordoba, to Granada, to Ronda. Just some of the most amazing places for me in Spain, and I'm so jealous.
So this is really good to know because I've got another car invite in June. That's a pretty exciting one. That's also in Spain, and I want to take a few extra days after that to just have some holiday. So I'm going to ask you for your recommendations.
Oh, yeah. I have a lot.
Okay, cool,
it's one of my favorite places to go. Well, that's awesome. The Aston Martin Vantage, that's the new one, and I think it's gorgeous.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. They kind of, Aston Martin needs to get some profitability under its belt. The cars are really expensive, and they're not living up to the pricing. Very interesting to see if this one actually helps sort of get some momentum going in the right direction.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing about the trip and the car. So I guess you can tell us about that on our next episode. Same time, same place. That does it for today. I'm Matt Miller.
And I'm Hannah Elliott. And this is Bloomberg.